Imagine this scenario. It's Monday, October 20th, 2025. Maybe around 9 a.m. Eastern. You reach for your phone, try to send a quick payment, maybe check your stocks, or just, load up a streaming show. And then
Nothing.
your whole digital world just freezes up. No error message pops up. Just, silence. Digital silence.
Yeah, and that silence wasn't just on your phone. That was the day Amazon Web Services, AWS, had a massive global digital failure. It basically turned huge parts of the internet into, a ghost town for 15 incredibly long hours.
It sounds like something out of a bad tech movie, honestly.
Yeah.
But the reality was just chaos, wasn't it? Rideshare maps showing nothing, gaming platforms just booting millions of people out mid-game, critical banking services vanished.
Yeah.
One report called it simultaneously hilarious and terrifying, a big reminder of how fragile our digital setup really is.
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive today. We've sifted through, all the technical postmortems, the academic papers, the news reports, to kind of give you the shortcut. We really need to understand what exactly went wrong inside the cloud that day. Why this single outage caused, 6.5 million global complaints? And most importantly, what practical, actionable lessons you can take away to, protect your own digital world.
Because the stakes are they're huge here. AWS isn't just some tech company. It's basically the backbone for about a third of everything online. So when AWS stumbles, the whole digital economy doesn't just slow down. It pretty much grinds to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's dive into the technical side. Act 1. The technical tipping point. If this was the internet having a heart attack, where exactly did it start? What was the epicenter?
Right. The location is actually crucial. It all kicked off in the U.S. East 1 region. That's in Northern Virginia. For years, everyone's known this specific region as, the most powerful, most densely packed hub for AWS infrastructure. If you're looking for the heart, the central nervous system of the cloud, that's pretty much it.
And the initial cause, according to AWS's own reports, sounds almost minor. They said it was a single innocent configuration error in the DNS, the domain name system.
That's the key. And for an informed audience like ours, we know DNS is basically the internet's GPS, right? It takes those friendly website names we type, like, say, google.com, and translates them into the numerical IP addresses that machines need to find each other. So if that GPS system gets even slightly miscalibrated, everything downstream starts to fail.
Okay, but hold on. If the root cause was relatively simple, a bad DNS update, why couldn't they just fix it quickly? What turned a simple error into a 15-hour global meltdown? Where did the complexity come in?
The problem wasn't just fixing the DNS itself. It was the chain reaction it set off, specifically within the internal network of EC2. EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud, that's AWS's core infrastructure service, it runs all the virtual servers for countless companies, and that internal EC2 network failure stopped applications from finding the DynamoDB API.
Right, DynamoDB. That's critical because it holds all the essential data, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Logins, user info.
Precisely. DynamoDB is this huge non-relational database. It handles things like logins, passwords, user preferences, likes on social media, basic application states. So when EC2 couldn't properly resolve the DNS addresses to find DynamoDB, the entire application layer just got flooded. AWS described it later as a perfect storm of failed requests hitting a wall.
It also sounds like the digital equivalent of waking up with severe short-term memory loss. Like you need to do something, but have no idea where to go.
That's actually a really good analogy. Mike Chappell from the University of Notre Dame put it very well. He said the DNS failure caused a kind of temporary amnesia across the network. Machines knew they had tasks, data to send, processes to run, but they couldn't remember where to send the data, which server was supposed to handle what. They were effectively lost in cyberspace, completely disoriented.
Wow. And that state of digital amnesia, that confusion, lasted for 15 hours. From Monday morning right through until about 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah.
The consequences of that duration.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us straight into Act 2, the universal blackout and the very real human impact.
Exactly. This is where the technical jargon translates into actual real-world problems, pain even. And the outage really didn't discriminate. It hit critical services everywhere, from London to Tokyo, New York to Sydney.
Let's start with the money side, the financial fallout. Because that seemed incredibly fast and scary.
Oh, it was immediate. Major banking apps just collapsed instantly. People reported seeing their Venmo screens, their Robinhood trading apps, just frozen solid. And you have to think about the direct personal cost there. Maybe a stock trader sees a perfect market opportunity, just evaporate because they physically can't make the trade. Or, even more critically, there was that sourced example of a mother unable to use her payment app. She couldn't buy baby formula because the service was just down.
Yeah, that really grounds it.
Yeah.
It reminds you, these aren't just conveniences anymore. They're deeply embedded in, well, the basics of daily life. Though I guess the fun and games took a massive hit, too.
Absolutely. The entire entertainment sector basically ground to a halt. Snapchat became a desert of silent stories, as one source put it.
Yeah.
Roblox, Fortnite, millions of users kicked out mid-raid, which is, a very specific kind of modern frustration. Trying to stream anything, forget it. Prime Video is reportedly stuck on eternal buffering.
And even the simple daily routines just fell apart. Lyft maps apparently showed up blank, paralyzing ride-hailing. Airline reservation systems froze up worldwide, causing huge delays. And apparently even Duolingo users lost their daily streaks. The horror.
We shouldn't forget the AI platforms either, and the communication tools. Things like ChatGPT and Perplexity were apparently just stammering apologies, unable to handle even simple requests. Meanwhile, big platforms like Reddit and even secure messaging apps like Signal just went completely dark, unavailable. It really laid bare how much we rely on this single, massive, centralized infrastructure.
Yeah, the sheer scale of the chaos really hammers home that core problem, doesn't it? The dominance issue.
It really does. And Bloomberg's analysis used a pretty stark metaphor for it. They said, the internet depends on AWS like a baby depends on its a bottle. Which is powerful because AWS controls, about 33% of the global cloud market? A third? That level of concentration means any seemingly small hiccup, like that DNS misconfiguration, instantly blows up into this massive single point of failure, affecting a huge chunk of the world's digital activity all at once.
That concentration of power, that feels like maybe the biggest lesson here. Which brings us nicely to Act 3, the response, the recovery, and, crucially, the lessons we need to take away from this whole mess.
Well, to give AWS some credit, they did identify and patch that root DNS failure relatively quickly. And once the fix was in, they immediately pushed out technical guidance to clients. Things like recommending users clear their caches to help speed up recovery on their end. One source jokingly called it rebooting your router, but on corporate steroids.
Right. But even with the main fix applied quickly, the recovery wasn't like flipping a switch back on for everyone, was it? It seems uneven.
No, definitely not. Because, technical recovery at the source and actual customer recovery are often two different things. So while AWS declared they were back at 100% by Monday afternoon, think about the sheer backlog. All those failed requests hitting the system at once meant many services stayed sluggish or unavailable for hours longer. And the user response online, particularly on X, was pretty predictable. Lots of jokes flying around about AWS taking an extended siesta. The reputational hit was definitely real.
Okay, so if this whole event kind of holds up an uncomfortable mirror to how digitally dependent we are, what's the core message? What's the survival kit we should pack moving forward?
I think it showed us two things really clearly. First, just how incredibly fragile our digital lives can be. They really do hang on technical threads as fine as, the DNS system. And second, and this is probably the biggest lesson for any organization or even individuals relying heavily on the cloud, technical monogamy is a very risky business strategy.
Meaning, we just can't afford to rely solely on one provider anymore, even one as big and usually reliable as AWS.
Precisely. That's the major takeaway from this whole 15-hour nightmare. Diversification is no longer optional. It's mandatory. You just cannot put all your digital eggs in one cloud basket. Organizations really need to be implementing robust multi-cloud strategies. Balancing workloads across different platforms. Think AWS plus Azure, or maybe Google Cloud as well. So if one provider or even just one region of one provider goes down, your critical services can hopefully stay online somewhere else.
And what about stepping back from the cloud entirely? Is there a simpler, more fundamental recommendation for resilience?
Yeah, it sounds almost archaic, but maintain functional, up-to-date offline contingency plans. Some of our sources made a point of reminding us that sometimes basic paper and pencil systems are still valid, especially for truly mission-critical processes. Resilience isn't always about the fanciest new tech solution. Sometimes it's just about having a solid backup plan for when the digital world inevitably flickers out. The real goal here is moving from just being sort of passively addicted to the scroll to having active control over the tools we use.
Okay, that feels like a good place to wrap up our main analysis. We've established the cause, that devastating DNS configuration error in US East 1. And the result, this massive, thankfully temporary global impact. And the recovery, which relied on quick technical work, but also maybe a little bit of luck.
Exactly. We've walked through the disaster itself, but now we really need to face the broader questions this whole event throws up. Questions that have serious implications for policy, for global stability, for fairness.
Right. And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over until our next deep dive. Given AWS's huge market share, that 33%, and its role as, let's be honest, implicit critical infrastructure, should governments maybe start thinking about more regulation or even financial penalties for failures that stem from this kind of implicit monopoly?
And you can extend that question globally, too. In a world where maybe 80% of companies rely on just a handful of these giant cloud providers, what are the serious implications for digital equity, especially in developing countries? Think about it. Their entire economies can be impacted when a single region, like US East 1, hiccups.
And finally, maybe something a bit more proactive. A social challenge, perhaps. Should society think about creating something like an annual outage day, a day where we practice voluntary digital disconnection just to test our own preparedness and, remember what life is like off the grid, even for a bit? Just some things to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Well, thank you for diving deep with us into the anatomy of the great AWS outage. We'll catch you on the next one.